We're gonna get this cranked up. Welcome to the second annual Fatherhood Unity Month, and my special guest is Mr. DJ Johnson, the motivator, as I shared with everybody. Anytime you want to be motivated, all you got to do is go to his IG. It's gonna be something there for you, and you know, here we are. And DJ, welcome.
Welcome, brother. Let me know if the background noise is a lot or if it's okay. Let me know.
Okay.
Thank you for having me, though. I appreciate it.
No, man, I had to, right? I've been watching again, as share with you. I admire watching fathers do their thing, and so Fatherhood Unity Month. Three things we really want to get out of it is, really the fatherhood, fathers sharing their story, right? More importantly, how fatherhood impacts family, and really fatherhood solutions. That's what we really kind of go through. And you know, you got your shirt on, and so we're gonna get into that, change your narrative, because that's huge. That's really huge because society needs to do that. And I'm big on I really love that. So, first, brother, tell us about DJ.
Yes, so my name is DJ Johnson. Government name is DeAntoine Johnson, but I go by DJ. Have since about middle school, I think. But I grew up in Indiana, right next door to my guy Calvin up in Michigan, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So Midwest swang is what I like to call it.
Sure.
But yeah, so grew up there. Had a mother and a father who had me when they were 16. And eventually my dad wasn't able to be in my life. And then my mother remarried or married. She never married my dad, but she married my stepdad. And they didn't have a great relationship, a healthy one at least. And so there was abuse and different things that we had to experience and go through up until about fourth grade, where my mom came up to me one day and was like, "Hey, can't take care of you anymore," pretty much, and ended up going to my grandmother into foster care kinship, and ultimately was in the foster care system until I turned 18, until I aged out. And thankfully, by the grace of God, was able to graduate from high school throughout all that. Throughout my K through 12 career, I went to four different elementary schools, three different middle schools, and three different high schools before I ended up graduating out in California. I moved to California right before my senior year of high school. Long story, but it was a decision that really, changed the course of my life. A lot of discovery and different things that kind of happened for me to really become the person that I am today. And so I ultimately graduated from college, and got a couple of master's degrees. And now I'm a person who has two sides to me. Okay, so I have the side of me who's a sports guy. My first master's was in coaching and athletic administration. And so I work at Fox behind the scenes on the show called Speak for Yourself. And I'm a researcher, statistician, whatever you want to call it. And I provide research support along with my boss, who's also another researcher on the show. And we support the show with research. Also, a freelance sports statistician. And so I do NBA. I feel like there's a lot of noise in the background, but you ain't saying nothing, so we
Right.
must be
I'm
okay.
into the story. Good.
And so I, do stats and different things like that for NBA, NFL, baseball, you name a sport, I probably have done it. So that's one side of me. The other side is my second master's is in coaching. I'm sorry, school education, school counselor. So I'm a counselor, and I utilize that with my business DJ Inspires to do motivational speaking. But I contract with schools to provide counseling, individual and group support to students. I also do parent workshops, parent groups, parent education stuff. with the schools to support the parents as well. And my big thing is I want to bridge that communication gap between parents and their teens because I work mostly with teens at the high schools. Um, and so that is me in a nutshell. That last part of it about the sports and I ultimately though feel like my calling will be pushed towards working with students and families and motivational speaking full time. But for now, God has blessed me with the ability to do both, and so I'm just doing both. So that's me.
Well, that's powerful, right? And it's impressive because we both know how families are in trouble, right? You know, we speak to it. You know, I noticed that in the work you were doing in the middle schools and things like that. We kind of target the 8 to 14s over at Emmy World, right? And in prevention, and that process is a huge undertaking. And like, I don't have a master's degree, but 36 years of working with, yeah, 30,
That's enough.
right. And so
You've
I
been in
kind
the
of like,
game long enough.
right, right. And I kind of like mirror you. It's funny listening to you because I kind of mirror you. I had the whole sports background, put 40 young men in school, coaching, and then went to the community. And since I've been in the community, um, just like you, passionate about change, right? How can we change the narrative, right?
Yeah.
Just to touch on the foster care piece. Here, I sit on um, a foster care committee, right?
Hmm.
And they're getting ready to have a major aging out process across
Hmm.
this country for kids in foster care. Um, Foster care is, you know, one of the areas I can't seem to get a grasp on, but I'm really blown away when I see a success story like yourself, right? And how
Yeah.
you came through, right? Because I don't know if everybody knows the statistics, DJ. What are statistics for black boys and getting picked up out of the foster care?
So I don't know specific. That's something I need to look into. But overall, 50% graduate from high school. Another of those 50% that actually graduate from high school, only 3% go on to get their bachelor's degree. And then there's percentages of on the girl side, like they end up having kids that ultimately end up in the foster care system. I think that percentage is high. And the percentage of foster youth who end up becoming homeless is a high, too high percentage. Don't know
Yeah.
exactly, but it's too high for the percentage that it is. So a lot of statistics that I think put foster youth at a disadvantage in terms of, and this is kind of where change your narrative came from, was like, if we don't take control of our story, if we don't take control of the narrative that is set for us, because if we don't take control of it, it will be set for us. And in particularly for foster youth, the statistics are out there. 50% of you won't graduate from high school. 3% of you won't get, the 97% of you that end up going to college won't even get your bachelor's degree. Like, those are out there unless you decide that, one, I'm not going to follow this path. I'm not going to I'm not going to allow these people to set and tell the story for me. I am in charge of telling the story myself. I want to make sure that I share a narrative that I want to put out into the world. And so, especially for foster youth, it's like, you can see those statistics, you can hear those statistics, and it could get you down. You could probably think like, oh man, like I don't even have a chance. But the reality is there's a lot of people that I actually know of who have defeated the system and have been able to conquer the system. And I think that's the message and story that, one, all the students can have if they are given the power and understanding to know what's in their grasp, right? I think really one of the biggest things, like when I aged out of the system, so to speak, um, there are things available to us as former foster youth up until we're like 24, different benefits and different things that are available to us, that could either help us with college or work or different things. And I don't remember being told those things. And granted, I probably maybe could have sought those things out better, but I since middle school I have been trying to get out of the system.
Right.
I was, you know what I mean? Like I was advocating, like, let me get adopted. Like that was always my thing whenever my case manager would ask, and it never happened. And so by the time I was old enough, I was like, okay, I'm done. I don't got to do with y'all. But it really messed me up in those years of 19, 20 years old, 21, where I had people in my life who was helping me, but I didn't get as much help as I maybe could have, that really would have deterred me from taking all these detours I took before I got to the life that I have now. So, great question. I haven't been asked that too often, but thinking about that time and just the support that there, I would say the foster youth community, the resources, the different, laws and different things that are in place. I feel like it's better now than it was when I was aging out of the system. Um, but still, a lot of kids are out there that just don't have the information or don't know.
Man, human trafficking,
Yeah. Oh
right?
yeah.
Man, it's the first time I went to the meeting, I think I cried.
Mm,
I cried very, very hard. Like it was hard for me to um, really grasp that you have that many children, right? And
yeah.
so, looking into it, like just thinking about what you just said yourself about it, and how many kids didn't know, or how many people took advantage of the kids that didn't know,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And so I'm always looking at the male perspective in a lot of things, right? And
Mm,
so in that process, like what you were saying is like you really didn't know, but like it is just appears across the board. Major programs.
mm,
We're, the black boys last, right? And we're first kicked out of daycares and everything. Man. It's
yeah.
absolutely horrible
Yeah.
to really see and watch it take place. So
Yeah.
tell us your fatherhood story. I understand you're married. And,
Yes, yes. Married. It'll be 7 years for us this year. Um, and we have one kiddo who actually turns 4 on Sunday. We having a birthday party for him on Saturday. But yeah, the thing that I pride myself in, I don't know if my wife does, but I know one of the things that we have been I've been bragging about, or not necessarily bragging, but very proud of, is that I'll just preface it by saying a lot of folks in my family had kids before they were ready, i.e., my mom and dad, and it just kind of trickled throughout the family. And so I was very intentional about making sure that I didn't have kids before I was ready. And even, when I married my wife, and, we was like, hey, we're going to enjoy each other for the first few years. And then literally had a conversation of like, I think we're ready. And then there we go. They have a son. So that's how it started. And then it started with me, because I didn't necessarily have my dad in my life, and I had father figures, but y'all know, it's, if you don't know, it hits different when your dad is involved in your lives. So I've heard, so I've seen from friends who have had their
oh, it
dads in
hit.
their lives.
It
It
hit.
hits.
It
And
hit.
so my dad wasn't in my life. And so I just was having this conversation on the podcast about how I dubbed myself a first generation dad, meaning I am in my son's life and I didn't have that experience myself. And, I think my dad may have. I think his dad was in and out of his life. So, like, one, you're breaking a cycle, and two, you're embarking on a journey and a trail that is new to you, that is unfamiliar. And so you get these. I think the first thing you do is you operate so much like, I just don't want to do that. So the first thing was, I just don't want to not be in my child's life. So being present at one point in my beginning of my fatherhood journey is like, I'm good. I was there when he was born. I'm there as he's growing up, and each birthday, like, in some instances, like, that was the beginning. That was me saying, okay, I'm good. But then as you go through the journey, especially over the last year, I discovered just being present wasn't enough. Like, I needed to be more. I needed to be more involved. I needed to deal with my baggage, my stuff, my trauma, because it was impeding my ability to be the best dad that I could be for my son, and the best husband that I could be for my wife. And so my fatherhood journey started off one way and is now at a point where it's evolving. It's better, but it's evolving one, because I still have so much healing that needs to be done from my childhood, and I'm trying my darnest to not allow that to bleed into me being the father that I try to be for my son.
So yeah. Now
So
to
much there.
no. I like the fact because in your fatherhood story, I was going to touch on that whole the trauma piece, right?
Hmm.
We society seems to forget that
Yeah.
you go through these experiences, right? That
Yeah.
you just automatically, put on your cape, I'm dead, right? But
Yeah.
don't realize that you have to wrestle with some jealousies because you didn't have it. You have to
Mm.
wrestle with some, what I mean, you got to wrestle with some things that you didn't get or was taught, and
Hmm.
you have to wrestle with that. I know several men who was jealous of their kids' athletic prowess. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And it really did something to them. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
like in this case, what is that one moment for you during fatherhood? Because you're an educator, right?
Hmm.
You're involved, and your son is 4. I
Yeah.
remember my son that I shared the picture with today. He read at the age of 4. I always recommend the kids read early because
Hmm.
it opens the brain, right? Even more so. But
Yeah.
that's just my philosophy. You know what I mean? Where I'm at. But in your case, what did that look like for you? For you to make that transition, how did that make you feel? Right, going from
Yeah.
one way to another way.
I think it was hard. It was hard in the sense of like, I think the first part of it is like you go through feelings and emotions that something is wrong with you. And so you kind of have to deal with that. And then you have to deal with the feelings and emotions that you've been, at least for me, and I'm sure a lot of other fathers out there, a lot of men are like this, where we suppressed a lot of different things that may have happened to us in our past. And so all of a sudden, I think I heard this, maybe my therapist said it or somebody, but I heard it from somewhere of like, our kids will bring out certain things in us that we didn't even realize we needed to address or deal with. And so you could be walking around thinking that you're healed, and then you have a son, and all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, I still need to heal. I still need to deal with some things. And so I think you're going through this process of like, oh man, like I need to manage and really get into the process of, being able to be in a better position to heal. Like all these years of going through trauma, they have the adverse childhood experience, the A score. um, I scored the highest that you could score on that test, like had every adverse experience happen to
Right,
me in my childhood.
right.
And so you would think a person who has experienced that much would have got some type of therapeutic counseling support before I graduated from high school. That wasn't the case. Thankfully, I had outlets. I played sports. I was in music at a point, played instruments. So I was always doing something, which allowed me to have that as a coping skill. But as I got older and those things kind of went away, I wasn't as athletic as I was when I was a collegiate athlete. And so all those different things that I was able to suppress or put down or put away start to hit head, like either with my son or even in my relationship with my wife. And so it wasn't until after my son was born that I got into therapy for the first time in 2019. Um, and so him being born and just really highlighted things for me that maybe I knew, but just, wasn't in a position to deal with it. But I recognized like, okay, he's here. I can't afford to let any of those bad things from my past impact this dad that I want to be. I want to be a good dad. I want to be present. I want to make sure that my son grows up and he's better than me. Um, but I recognize that I needed to deal with and heal certain things to get to that place. And I think it was a very hard process in the first place, and it's still hard at times. But I recognize that I'm going in the right direction because of the relationship that I've been able to establish with my son, even with him being at 4. Because that's something we pride ourselves on when I coach parents up, like, hey, we've been missing the mark. We got to make sure that we get back to the basic, and that is establishing a quality relationship with your child, no matter what age they are, because it's going to look different. And I know in our community, we have this thing where we're like, oh, we don't want, I'm not supposed to be friends with my kids. Yeah, but you're not supposed to alienate them either.
Right.
And you're not supposed to, make it so they don't feel comfortable talking to you about certain things as well. So I think people have to figure out what that looks like for them, and get into that space where they can create that relationship. So that's kind of been my thing of like, all right, is this going to hinder our relationship? Is this going to, and how do I work through it? How do I manage it? How do I make sure that we, discipline him and make sure that it's in a way that he's going to actually learn and get what we're trying to get him to understand. And it's a journey, but it's a journey that I'm very proud, and I feel honored to be able to be on it.
So yeah, first of all, congratulations to you. You're being
Yes, thank
able
you.
to seek therapy is very, very important, right? One of one of our board members, Dr. Euro Hill, and another one, we keep doctors around, right?
Mm,
Because there are some cases that you're just not going to be able to handle, especially with the video game violence and
mm,
various things that is attacking boys. Like I
mm,
got a message today about, boy, he's about to be 18. He doesn't want to do anything. Well, once he got to 18, you kind of let it go too far,
yeah.
right? And so when you start talking about removing video games out of the lives and things that make our boys not active,
Mm,
right? Suddenly people want to interfere, but here's the truth, right? As long as he's not active, testosterone is not being built. So he
mm,
doesn't have a healthy, right? In some cases, from ACEs trauma, his body can shrink because he's not active, right? And so some trauma is at the table, right? And right now we do a smash suicide campaign. So boys 5 to 11, number one in
yeah.
suicide. So you're looking at, you're going, wow, you know what I mean? And so that whole message, your whole message right there was
Mm,
worth everything to get that here's a father, right? And the real piece is that fatherhood brain kicked in.
mm-hmm,
Your fatherhood brain kicked in, and it was like, and a lot of people don't understand that the fatherhood brain doesn't necessarily kick in during the pregnancy. It is
mm,
after the pregnancy that the fatherhood brain kicks in and
mm,
begins to work, protect, do the things right. So prior to, when he's trying to figure himself out, we have been throwing these men away, not realizing as soon as that child is born, that fatherhood brain kicks in, he
mm,
misses the connect,
yep.
which is very, very important. And I'm glad you shared that. So let's talk about the change your narrative. I just got caught up, right? I got
Yep.
caught up in several of your videos, over the last couple of months, and played them several times, right? And what I admire is this honesty, right? This honesty with yourself, because I think we miss that. I think
Yeah.
sometimes we miss that honesty with ourselves, right? And having that honesty, DJ, is just refreshing to watch. Uh,
Mm,
watch you tell your stories and speak that narrative. I had no idea there was another side to you, right? Because you're caught up and changed the narrative. So share what that's like.
it's, I think before I was able to be in a space where I can share at the level that I share now, um, I had to go through that healing process, because some of the things that I share, some people be like, whoa. First of all, that's crazy that you went through that. But second of all, wow, are you able to keep reliving this? Are you able to keep telling this? And I would say I wasn't when I wasn't healed.
Right.
And when I wasn't healed, my story was my story and it didn't belong to anybody else. So I was holding on to it for whatever reason, right? And once I was able to forgive, or once I was able to start that healing process, then I was able to see how powerful my story was in terms of helping students, impact their lives
Right.
by me just sharing. Because the more I was able to share with students, the more they were like, whoa, okay, you get it. And it's not too many people on this campus that do. And so that kind of got the ball rolling. I'm like, okay, whoa, I need to snap out of whatever I was in that made me feel like my story was private and nobody else should hear it. I need to get into a place of being a vessel. I need to get into a place of being a person who has now I'm learning and I'm grown in my journey enough to know, like, God allows us to go through things because he knows that whatever we went through and had gone through um, is going to benefit us in terms of benefit us and benefit the people that we ultimately are going to help, who may be going through what they're going through, or who is going to relate with us, you know, whatever story that they might have. So for me, once I was kind of able to have that revelation, then it was like, okay, what stories are out there about my life that I'm going to take charge of and make sure that I change. You know, the story of being a former foster youth, the story of you know, not being a great student in high school and whatever it might be. Like all those stories, you know, go out the window in terms of I wanted to change the narrative and shift what people think about kids who grew up in a childhood that I had to endure. Then I wanted to be able to be in a position to help students and say, look, you grew up in the hood. You don't have your father in your life. Your father isn't involved. He isn't present, whatever it might be. Like, just know that that isn't your crutch. That isn't something that should hold you back. Like, you have to recognize that you do have the power in yourself to change your narrative, to change your story, and take control of it. And it's just about empowering them and helping them understand that and see that. And so for me, change your narrative is one twofold: being able to say constantly be in a position to change my story for what I want it to be, but also putting positioning students, families, parents, whoever gets the opportunity to hear me speak, putting them in a position to say, yes, this is my story. I'm going to tell it, and I'm going to, you know, change my narrative from whatever it was before.
especially by owning it,
Yes. Yeah.
especially by owning it. It was just the one video was just really inspiring how you were talking to the students and the people. And I think, when you talk about change the narrative, my wife always speaks about, changing the narrative, right?
Hmm.
You have to take it another way,
Hmm.
right? Because we seem to, I had this big, I have this big issue with the whole Black History thing, right? And the
Hmm.
whole American history, the whole night, right? And I have a tendency to look at the things as what an amazing body of work with all of the things that was happening around you and to you. You were able to produce all of these remarkable things, these stories, uh, inventions, right? Every time it was an obstacle, right? Um, America was built, the world was built off of ideas and the resiliency to change the narrative, right?
Yep.
And it came at the expense that we as men and fathers, because we were the leaders, we had to pay for that.
Yeah.
And I don't think society really understands or men understand what we are up against and how we have to change the narrative.
Yes.
We have to.
Yeah.
We have to because it has taken too much. We've taken too many lives. We've taken it just it's been too much. And so by taking this fatherhood approach, um, which I kind of been at since I was a kid, so taking the father approach was important. So you target just middle schools would change your narrative, or
So, yeah, middle school and high schools. I'm not opposed to speaking to elementary. I've had a couple of opportunities, but middle school is, I feel like, most impressionable. Then your high school students are, they feel like they know what, you know, what they're talking about, but for the most part, they're still impressionable enough to, if I think middle school students are highly impressionable. High school students just want to know if you're real or not. And so I like talking to both because, you know, you can get a message out there for the middle school students and most of them will take to it. And then if you are real enough for the high school students, they will take to your message because they're like, okay, he's a real one. He gets it. So I talk to both, and those are the reasoning why I like to talk to both of those populations.
right, which is excellent,
Yeah.
right? Because you do because that's what they say. They really want it real.
Yeah.
Even when you approach uh, young people in the streets or whatever. They just want it real because
Hmm.
people fail to realize that they've been lied to so much,
Mm, yeah.
right? They've been lied to. So, I was explaining this to a group of teachers before. I said, when you lie to the kids, they've seen every lie at the crib.
Pretty much.
How?
Yeah.
So when you go to tell that lie, they done seen every facial expression there is, right? Yeah, well, today, no, don't do that because right away they recognize that at home. I'll never forget. I was talking to a class at Henry Ford. A sister brought me in to speak to the class at Henry Ford, and we're
Hmm.
in there going right, and the kids are just sharing information,
Hmm.
right, and the teacher, 20 years, when it was over with, it was like he said, "I've never seen anything like that." Right? How were you able to do it? I can't get my class to do this. How were you able to do it? I said, if you treat them like they're your own kids, you will get the maximum
Yep.
out of them. See, you make a difference when you're teaching these kids.
Hmm.
You make a difference where you can't make a difference. So they know every game. When you give them the business, they give you what you need.
Hmm.
Their scores go up, the attendance go up. Why? Because they can trust you,
Yep.
right? And you care about them. Instead of you making it about just this curriculum, if you just pick and choose to treat them like you would do your own kid, education and the kids would be better.
To your point, if you ask everybody who has ever gone through the school system, like who was your favorite teacher? I don't think I've ever had a person not answer that question, because you always have the one
The
who
one.
treats you right, who speaks to something in you that you didn't know that was possible.
Yeah.
Like even if you hated the teacher in the moment, you have some people who in the future will be like, oh, you know what? I ain't like her at the time, but she actually was a good teacher. She actually was a so it's like teachers are out there and they're like, oh, that's not possible. I can't connect at that level or whatever it might be. It's like, no, like everybody has had a favorite teacher. Why can't you be the one? Like, why can't you, as Calvin said, like treat these kiddos as if they are the adults that they're going to be in the future? I feel like as adults, for a long time, I think a lot of people in society look at kids as something less than adults or whatever. They're seen as less than the adults in the rooms typically. And what one thing that has helped me in being able to connect with students at the level that I get to is that I shifted that mindset from that to these are adults. Like the high school students are closer to it than middle school, but in some instances, I'm treating kids like the little people that they are and that they're going to be. And it's going to be levels. Like my son gets one level of what that looks like, and the high school students pretty much get what I do when I talk to regular adults, and that is an adult-like conversation. I'm going to treat them and have respect for them, just as if they were anybody else. And people might say, oh, those kids are running over you. Like, no, I think they are practicing what it's like to be in conversations and be in dialogues and be around adults, which in a situation where we treat kids like kids should stay in their place, we're not giving them enough practice when they get out into the real world to interact and be with adults. As parents, you are the first adults in your child's life. And so if that relationship isn't kicking, most likely the relationships with their teachers, the relationship with other adults in their lives won't be as good, because the one in the home, the one that's most important, isn't the one that has been conducive to helping them be successful in any of those other relationships
At all. And
at
so
all.
at all, right? And so the kid comes to school
Yep.
unprepared.
Yep.
Unprepared to have a conversation, unprepared to
Yes.
read a book, unprepared to be disciplined, unprepared to eat good food,
Yep.
unprepared. Like, so the kid is completely unprepared because the teaching at home is
Ain't happening.
unprepared.
And even worse, and I see this too often, a lot of kids don't even have the confidence or the ability to ask their teachers for help.
Yep.
I'm like, I see a student failing. I'm like, yo, have you talked to the teacher? Oh no, I haven't talked to him. Like, that only comes from a situation where in the home a parent is like, stay in the kid's place or don't talk. Like
Yeah.
that type of conversation isn't, encouraged in the home. And so when they get to school, they don't even feel confident or feel comfortable to speak to their teachers, which they need to be able to, especially if they're failing. So
Well,
great
and
point.
that goes back to that great dynamic that we're
Yeah.
talking about. That goes back to, um, what's the parenting model.
Yeah.
Yesterday, Andre talked about the modeling that his father
Oh yeah.
did, right?
Yeah.
And so, what is the parenting model? And
Yeah.
telling a kid to mind their own business when they're watching you
Ooh,
crash,
talk about it.
if watching you crash, that's not good modeling,
Mhm.
right? So being open and truthful. Hey, listen, I, I remember one time, brother, I went in, my son was in high school. I opened up the door. Um, I was struggling with some real estate, and he looked up at me, and I just told him, I said, "Hey, man, get yourself ready." I'm talking about, I'm crying. This is
Mhm.
tough,
Yeah.
right? But you gotta be able to, And so in that moment, we had a geek session while I was turning it around because I had to figure out how to turn it around. These are the relationships that we
Mm.
have to exude with the children, because the child doesn't know. This is the reason why we have so much success in our mentoring, is we teach them to lead.
Yep.
We teach them. So when they hit that middle school or the high school, you pretty much got a junior in high school as a
Yeah.
freshman. Our kids' mentality be completely different,
Yep.
especially if we are able to keep them right
Hmm.
through. You got a completely different kid. And the other part is that we help the parents model.
Hmm.
Here's some things that you need to be modeling at home, because our boys can easily be influenced, because we work primarily with boys.
Yep.
It can easily be influenced to the wrong thing, because everything tells them this is how you're supposed to act.
Yeah.
From the nightly news,
Hmm.
right, to the music videos, to right,
Yep.
they're getting all these images. This is how you supposed to act, and it's not been good. Was talking today with someone about the disconnect. How do
Hmm.
you see the disconnect between the senior citizens and the community?
I think I have so many takes on this, so I'm trying to figure out which one I want to say. But I think the main disconnect is I think you have some senior citizens who either pride themselves on the way they were raised, um, or felt some type of way about the way they were raised, and so they're on both ends. They're on the end of like they think this generation of kiddos is too soft.
Right,
We don't whoop them or hit them enough.
right.
And I think there's a part of that generation that feels like they feel some type of way that kids don't get hit or spanked enough because they feel like, well, it whipped me into shape. And the reality is, if we really want to be honest, I know a lot of folks, at least from my vantage point, family, whatever it might be, who was raised that way. And I wouldn't say that they are the best versions of themselves today. And so I want us to be realistic about the impact of being raised the way that we were raised. And here's the thing I think a lot of older folks hang up on: by addressing or saying that something was wrong with your childhood or you didn't get your needs met in your childhood, we feel like that's blasphemy against our parents. We feel like our parents did something wrong or they didn't meet the mark. And both can be true. They didn't meet your needs and they did the best that they could. They both could be true. And
Right.
so now that we understand that, how do we move forward either by advocating for saying, you know what, let me really be honest with my childhood and see, did I get my needs met? Was I able to be the best version of myself? Okay, how do I now encourage the newer generation to maybe implement some of the things that worked from our childhood? Let's be real, we don't know fully if whoopings work. We do know that it contributes to brain damage and all these different things when we talk about abuse.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so like, let's just be honest. I think the older generation don't want to be honest because, one, we either have to say that our parents did a bad job, depending on how you look at it. We have to come to grips with this trauma that maybe we've been suppressing and holding down, and we have to say that it was maybe wrong, or it wasn't the right way to raise our kids. And the truth could also be, this is the reality of what they grew up in, the type of environment that they had in terms of the racial aspect, the tension, the different things. Like maybe we felt like as a people that we had to raise our kids tough so they can endure the toughness that they were going to get outside of the home. Whatever it is, I think we all just need to be honest with, okay, what do the numbers say? Were we able to be our best selves? If not, how do we help this next generation be their best selves? Because the thing is, our ancestors did not want us to be going down the same path and doing the same things we've been doing for hundreds, if not thousands of years. They want us to be better than them. They sacrificed and did a lot of things before us. And so we have to carry the torch and ensure that generations are not are not having to succumb to multiple generational curses upon generation. So my mindset is, I want my child to be the best version of himself. I don't want him to be a sheep and just kind of go along with the herd. I want him to be able to speak for himself. I want him to be able to advocate for himself. I want him to, speak against these laws and different things that these politicians are trying to put into place, even in 2021, which is crazy to me. But like, I think what we have inadvertently done to our community is that we stifled our ability to speak up for ourselves. And this is why we still have racial issues. It's bigger than that, but in general, we in a way have contributed to some of the issues that we see in our communities because of the way that we have raised our kiddos.
Well, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
right. And the like we talked about, you know, we're only so many generations literate.
Yeah. Oh, that's deep.
That's right. So and you know, Andre made that clear yesterday, but
Yeah.
right, you know, we often talk about, you know, you only been free since a certain amount of time.
Yep.
At the same time, there was always something in tow. But
Hmm.
I'd like to take the journey a little further because it really exploded, and that disconnect really exploded, right? When we begin to yank fathers
Oh, yeah.
out of the lives
Hmm.
of children and homes, right? And fathers making the decision, right? Because people forget that there were many fathers who made the decision to go to the streets
Hmm.
so the family could have a roof.
Yep.
The actual government didn't want your family to be a family,
Hmm.
right? And some of the most diabolical policies come from the same people who didn't want you to be a family.
Exactly.
It's amazing, right? But
Yep.
let's take it a little further. That you, because you were the smaller culture, were the experiment, but the whole goal was to detour everyone.
Hmm.
And so, like you find in fatherhood, all fathers are become impacted
Hmm.
uh, tremendously, right? So it's just an amazing story. It's something we probably have to get into
Yeah.
another time,
that's,
but
that's loaded.
it's loaded, right?
Yeah.
And it's real because when you get into that, um, you know, when you get into that, how important is that? Like I eat, I try to spit this information. I guess spit ain't the right word, but share
Mhm.
this information as much as possible, right? That you're very, very valuable. Thank God your son has you, your story, your result. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
Because he doesn't, there's no complacency,
Hmm.
right? Here's your dad, right? And we're going through some of these things for the first time,
Hmm.
myself and you. There's no
Yeah.
complacency,
Yeah.
right? And so the fact that you and the wife, the safest place, right? Two-parent household with
Hmm.
two loving parents, like it's so much nutrition and nutrients and spiritual and all this stuff is happening to your
Hmm.
son because he's in that environment.
Yeah.
And because we don't have that environment, so many people don't, right? Trauma is usually the reason and excuse, but we've been attacking dads, right? Attacking dads because we had to reap as fathers.
Hmm.
Did a lot of bad things, so now we get to turn it around. Um, One of the questions I really wanted to ask is, really want you to lean into this thought process. It's not a question, but solutions, right? I
Okay.
want you to put on
Yeah.
your solution
Hmm.
mindset. Give three solutions that families who are watching, families who will see, three
Hmm.
solutions to make family better.
I think first and foremost, dads have to recognize the power that they have. Not power in terms of like I'm the head of the household and
Right,
I control everything, but power in like you being present, you being intentional, you being loving. You don't even realize the impact that you're going to make on your child if you are all of those things. And so that's the type of power you hold. Like naturally, we have power because we are men, and that's what comes with that. But for us not to abuse that and be intentional about how we interact with our kids and be with our kids and just be there for them. I always tell this story because it's just so powerful to me. I had a student who was in my group. With students in group, you know how it is. Some of them like to act up. They don't really want to participate fully. And so we finished the group and that was that. So I ended up seeing him a couple months later, maybe the next semester, and he's in discipline. And he's just sitting there. I'm like, yo, what's going on? Like, and he's, he didn't really want to talk. So I was like, first of all, this is a student who, he got in trouble, but like he's the type of kid that shouldn't be getting in trouble. Like it just in terms of just how he is, just his affect, like it just doesn't fit him. And so I was like, you know what, let's just talk. Like I had an urge to, bring him in my office and let's just talk. So I'm talking to him and I'm just prying, like, man, what's going on? Like, why are you? I think he got caught up with some friends who was smoking weed or whatever it was. So I'm like, yo, what's going on? Like, you at school? Like, you doing it? Like, this doesn't seem like you. And what ultimately came out was his dad is in the home, but he doesn't have a relationship enough with him. And that was breaking the kid apart. And I was like, whoa, like to the point where my man was almost in tears telling me this about that his dad is there, but he's not there. And so, dads, yes, you have that power, right? Strength, whatever you want to call it,
right,
but you have a real power
yeah,
that can help you influence and change the course of this world,
right,
not just the nation, like the
right,
world, by how we can be mostly present, mostly intentional, mostly loving to our kids, boy or girl, other, whatever it is,
right,
like we are powerful. So that's the first thing. The second thing is um, we really have to understand the power of relationship. Like I feel like, I don't know about you, Calvin, like I feel like in the Black community, we really have this thing about not being friends with our kids. I've heard that so many times. I'm like, yes, I get it. We're not going to be our kids' best friends. And some will argue I want to be. But we really need to establish a relationship with our kids to the point where they're 4 or 5 now, and that relationship looks one way. They're in middle school, they're in high school, that relationship looks another way. That when they are an adult, they're not trying to move all the way across the country because you done got on their nerves and y'all relationship ain't tight. They want to keep you in their lives. They want to make sure that you're a part of conversations. They want to be able to have conversations when they grow up. And so, like, what is that relationship look like now? To the point where I heard this as well in a group. One of my friends who helps me with the parent groups, she was sharing about her niece who just learned how to drive. And so her niece got into an accident and called my friend, her auntie, first. Didn't call her parents. Her parents found out, got upset, started yelling, whatever it was. But later, the mom was like, "Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute." She got into an accident. She could have been seriously hurt, and in that time, she didn't think to call me, call us. And I was like, whoa, that's deep. Like that's how it is though, because we will overreact. We'll make, we'll parents, you're in trouble. Like we're so quick to punish and we're not quick enough to have that relationship. Because if I had a relationship, a quality one, if my child gets into an accident, what's the first thing I'm gonna be worried about? I'm not gonna be worried about being mad and punishing them. I'm gonna be worried about if they're okay. And so when we have the relationship with our kids, it really becomes about how are you as a person? How can we work together to get you to this path of ultimately having them be upstanding citizens is what I call when they grow up past 18. Like we as parents have the responsibility to train up and raise our kids up so that they can be self-sufficient, so that they can advocate for themselves, so that we can have a relationship where they don't hate my guts when they turn 18 and they don't want to leave my house so quickly, but they want to be able to keep me in their lives. And that's ultimately what I think parents need to shift. Like y'all gonna be old enough, parents, where your kids got to make decisions about what uh, uh, senior home they're gonna put you in, and if that relationship ain't on fleek, you might be in a senior home in the hood or something. I'm joking, but like that,
Oh,
we
but that's
we
that's real.
that's a reality. Like we really got to think in that essence. And then I guess the last solution would be a lot of times when we take on the parenthood journey, we forget our own goals and ambitions and dreams for ourselves. Most importantly, we kind of forget that we have to take care of ourselves in lieu of self care. And so I guess my last solution for parents, the way that we start our parenting groups is not about how to manage your kid better. It's not how to do anything that has anything to do with the kid. It's about how are you and how we help you be in a position to, one, better self-care, and two, put you in a position to deal with some of the things that you maybe need to deal with that's keeping you from being the best parent that you can be. And so my last solution is parents get into an active self-care practice, find some coping skills that work best for you. Because if I look back on my traumatic childhood, a lot of the trauma, abuse, different things that happened, it happened because there was a lot of stress in my house. We weren't the richest. My parents were always arguing with each other. They were always, my mom and my stepdad, like it was a stressful house. And I feel like if they had some better coping skills, if they had some better ways to deal with their stress, I don't think my childhood would have been as traumatic. And if we think about the parents out there who, get frustrated, they yell at the kids, whatever it might be, a lot of the times that comes out of stress. And so I challenge us as parents to deal with our stress, find some coping skills that work, and two, deal with your trauma. Because your trauma is getting in the way of you being the best parent that you want to be and should be. Like it's hard to be patient when you don't um, when you have certain things from your childhood that keeps you from being patient. That's what I've learned about myself. Like I'm better about the things that my son does now because from my childhood, I'm fighting like, oh, I know I would have, like you said, doing the comparison thing. I know I would have got smacked in the head for something like that. Like instead of doing that, I'm like, okay, son, what's happening here? Let's have a conversation. Let's figure out why you can't do whatever we're trying to get you to do or why you doing it. Like it's the relationship. Like I'm so fixated on making sure that this relationship is intact that when I discipline, when I guide, and we know discipline is guiding, pushing the child, guiding the child in the direction that you want them to go. It says train the child up in the way that you want them to go. Do we want them to be angry? Do we want them to hit, when they're bad or frustrated or punished, whatever it is? Like, I just think we have, as parents, just think about what it is that we want from our kid as they become an adult, and then implement little strategies, little things throughout their childhood up until they're an adult that's really going to serve them when they become adults.
Excellent, excellent points, right? And the word train,
Mm-hmm.
get into the word train, right? It is an extension.
Mm-hmm.
It is to guide.
Yep.
It's to transport. When you get into the word train and understanding how important it is, you have to be patient. You have to be kind. You
Yep.
have to be gentle, right? Sometimes you got to push, Bila. Then you got to challenge them. You
Yep.
got to see what they're made of. But
Yep.
that all comes from being involved, right? And parents on the same page, right? Because there are a lot of men that's in the house that they struggle with, having a voice,
Yeah.
right? Because every time you might say something, they might say something. And training boys is different than raising girls,
Yeah.
right? Because the boys, there's something different that has to be cultivated in us because one day we become these great dads,
Yep.
right? So it's a lot um, in a boy that society really, including from racism, that's to all those things, but society
Mm-hmm.
in a whole right now, how they see boys, right across the board, is
Yep.
disturbing. It's very disturbing. So,
Yeah.
with that being said, I mean, this has been awesome. One last
Yes.
question. One last question. What is that one thing that makes you a good father?
The one thing that makes me a good father is that I'm willing to be flexible and understanding, knowing that this journey is not linear, but it is like non-linear. Like I know there's gonna be ups and there's gonna be downs, but I think more than anything, I'm along for the ride. I know that like I said earlier, I'm embarking on this journey literally on my own, for at least for the first time. Like my mentor was a good dad, but like it's different. Like my dad wasn't in my life, so now I'm trying to actively be in my son's life, which is something that I've never had an opportunity to experience firsthand. And so I'm literally paving the way, changing the narrative, so to speak. And I know that I have to be flexible and I have to be understanding, because it's frustrating at times, but ultimately, I've embarked on this journey and I'm in it for the long haul.
Well, brother Dewan, DJ, you're winning.
Yes, sir.
You are winning, brother. Please tell everybody where they can reach you at and how they can get in contact with
Yep, I information about myself, my journey on my website, djinspires.com. You can also hit me up on Instagram at djinspiresall, spelled exactly how it is. And you can message me, hit me up, let me know that you resonated with the message. I always love to connect with those who may have resonated with the message. But yeah, those are the ways that you can get in contact with me.
Thank you. Thank you. I truly appreciate this, man. You know, one of the things that I think society must come to grips with, and I try to close with this point all the time.
Mm-hmm.
When they made superheroes, it was on the backs of fathers,
Mm-hmm.
right? When they designed the idea of a superhero, it was on the backs of fathers. Many fathers didn't know, right, what they had. The society, culturally, again, had to pay. At some point, we were going to have to pay
Mm-hmm.
for these misdeeds, evils, things that we had done.
Yep.
So I just wanted you to know, right, and the people to know, we're back. Fatherhood is here. We're different, and we are very impactful. And y'all need to hang on because we bring quite a few qualities. We got some stuff tonight. I'm on Courtney's, and we're gonna talk about that. But we got some stuff that comes with fatherhood that really is what make us superheroes. So I appreciate your time,
Absolutely.
man. Everybody go out, support the brother, support him as much as possible. I really appreciate you, man, and you have a awesome day, man.
You as well. I'm a huge fan of you, brother, and so appreciate you having me on your platform. And I already know you're gonna keep doing great work, so I ain't gonna tell you to, but I appreciate the work that you
Oh
do.
yeah, we gonna do some things, brother.
I know you are.
Yeah, yes sir.
Yes,
So I
sir.
appreciate that.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, we're signing off.